This is a story about somebody who tried. This is a story about William Stoner. But what did William Stoner try to do? That's a complicated question. It got him in this position. It got him looking like this. So it couldn't have been much. But maybe it was something. He was a PhD in literature. A riff, in fact, on Gordon Freeman. In that particular sense, they shared not a vocation, not a penchant for heroism. They certainly did not share action movie potential. No, William Stoner charged no barricades. William Stoner committed no acts of robust and productive violence. William Stoner was, for all intents and purposes, a cog in the Combine machine. And yet, I would contend that William Stoner is a hero nonetheless. But he is not a hero for saving people. Not like Gordon Freeman. He is not a hero for saving people. But he is a hero for saving literature, which I contend on a personal level and on a philosophical level is a robust and important part of what makes people people. What a place, City 24. There's a whole bunch of stories in City 24. But a lot of people drink brain water, so they don't remember them. Don't worry about that. Nothing's happening. On this stage, known as City 24, William Stoner got his start. And he specifically got his start in this particular corner of City 24, which at the time that he resided there was something of a chess hall. Now, within this chess hall, William Stoner proved himself a valiant player over the board, playing against many humans and, in fact, many aliens. He lived a very modest living. Some would describe it as homeless around this time of his life. During his stay in City 24, living this modest life of chess hall playing and occasional work shift attendance, he was a PhD in literature. He had an interest in saving books. Saving books on his person and keeping them in his possession away from Combine control and censors. He would hide away works of literature. This is the nature of William Stoner's heroics within the narrative of Willard. William Stoner would not stay in City 24 forever. He would go on to save more books. as you will soon see. William Stoner would not stay in City 24, partly because of his penchant for saving literature. This tendency to collect works of art, notably by the writer Kurt Vonnegut, of whom he once taught a class when he was a professor, would land him in some hot water. He would get in trouble, and he would find himself not sentenced to death, but sent to a rather unsavory industrial city known as Industrial 24. This abandoned city, repurposed into an industrial apparatus by which the Combine could continue to produce war machines. It is here, in Industrial 24, where William Stoner got a little bit more steady with his work. He actually could afford an apartment, which this particular exhibit represents. And as you can see to the left there, with the book cube representation matrix, you can see that a sizable collection of books had found itself into his possession over the months of grueling industrial labor. This stage of William Stoner's life was rather somber, rather isolated, but there was one shining light in all of Industrial 24, and that was particularly the CCDE library. It was located at the bottom floor of the Loyalist apartments at the time, and it featured a number of works which, in the narrative of the server, was produced by characters, but in actuality was writing produced by players over the course of many weeks, if not months. This compiled library was extensively visited by William Stoner in between shifts at the local factory. It was also here that the very same organization that produced that library would first hire William Stoner to do part-time work, that is, hanging up posters for the CCDE, or the propaganda arm of the Industrial 24 socio-political apparatus. But this is not where William Stoner's story would end. This is not the total number of books William Stoner would save. That would get much higher. From Industrial 24, Stoner would head east, just as we're about to head east on this particular map, I think. He would head east all the way to City 8, formerly known as Tokyo, just as City 24 is formerly known as Geneva. In City 8, however, William Stoner would find permanent work within the propaganda apparatus of the Combine regime. Notably, he would take up a role writing articles for the newspaper. He did this in part because, well, the work was easier than the grueling labor of the factories. But just as well, he did it to get closer to the books, because it was the propaganda arm which managed and cultivated the library that he thought he might one day be able to use to save more literature. His tenure in City 8, though personally productive, was marred in some amount of controversy, as while the newspaper division did well, the rebels did get their hands on a fictional printer and produced a number of rebel print newspapers, articles lambasting the administration or particular loyalists, or even the concept of loyalism in general, as well as throwing shade at a restaurant or two. Most of his career, this early on, was focused on curtailing and counteracting these rebel written articles. And he would scour the city daily to try and locate them all and censor them, because that was indeed his job as a state censor of the truth. City 8 was not meant to last, however, and soon he and many others in City 8 found themselves shipped off to Terminal 7. Terminal 7 is located in the former city of Vladivostok, itself being very close neighbors to the former city of Tokyo, or City 8. Vladivostok, or Terminal 7, it took on a role similar to that of City 24 and Industrial 24, that being a sort of outer industrial region, albeit not quite as built up as Industrial 24. In Terminal 7, William Stoner found himself in entire possession of the newspaper department of the propaganda wing of the Combine. In Terminal 7, it was, quite frankly, a bit of a mess. It was a very understaffed city. It was very poorly maintained, and not only were there very few co-workers at this point in his career, there were also very few workers in any department of the ministry, save for two who would later become very close acquaintances. As the eventual general editor of the newspaper, William Stoner managed to work his way into the Collaborators' Party, essentially the homeowners association, but for the Combine. Using his position as a party member and as the head of the newspaper, William Stoner leveraged the official library of prior cities into something of a personal project to preserve human literature and culture, specifically regional works from both City 8 in Japan and Terminal 7 in Russia, as well as a number of prominent English works as well. He did this by essentially crafting something of a legal fiction. This legal fiction was known as the Disbursement of Attenuated Literature Act. The Disbursement of Attenuated Literature Act allowed for the production of and printing of classical works with essays appended to them that were pro-Combine in nature. The scientific argument, a post hoc rationalization entirely fabricated by Stoner for this project, was that by producing a classical work with an appended essay about how great the Combine were, through an interpretation of the narrative, one could, in essence, take these works of fiction and works of philosophy and works of history and convert them into vaccines against wrongthink. Using this philosophical fiction, William Stoner managed to save several full shelves worth of text from the incinerators, from the censors, and managed to furnish them to the public. As the head of a small town industrial newspaper, William Stoner managed to save many hundreds of works that may still reside within Terminal 7 today. There's a lot of stories that went on in Terminal 7, but perhaps we can discuss those at a later time. For the sake of this particular touring exhibit, the Terminal 7 library was left behind, and William Stoner took on a position in a familiar city, a city he had once played chess in, a city known as City 24, or Geneva. In City 24, William Stoner found himself once again running a newspaper, though this time with a modest staff. In addition to his work in the party and his position within the propaganda wing of the Combine, he was able to save up a rather moderate sum of wealth for the society within which he lived. Leveraging this wealth, he managed to amass a rather sizable collection of personal works, some publicly available within his domicile, at least to close friends and roommates, but most hidden within sections of semi-abandoned buildings or behind walls, under desks, places just out of sight. He would take on this habit of hiding books in between a rather successful stint as a newspaperman, within which one of his hires would actually go on to become the chairman of the party. Though there's more to that story that we just can't afford to get into tonight. Suffice it to say, William Stoner had garnered some amount of respect within the hierarchy of City 24, and he leveraged that respect to save a rather sizable collection of literature. Yet again, up to his old tricks. The political space of City 24 was a lot more tumultuous than Terminal 7. So Terminal 7 was no walk in the park either. City 24, its politics had a level of viciousness to them that, though failed to match Terminal 7's brutality, certainly surpassed Terminal 7 in grandiosity. But William Stoner endured. He made it through, and he became a prominent member of the Collaborators Party, even in City 24. Like all cities within the Combine regime, City 24 was a prison, but it was a prison far more grand than most. Within this prison, William Stoner found himself not just ascending the party, but becoming vice director of the Ministry of Enlightenment, or the propaganda wing. This position would, while not kill him immediately, would eventually lead to his end. Before he died, however, he would find himself in possession, yet again, of control over a local library, which he would again leverage to produce a great body of classical works that would have otherwise been perhaps entirely lost to posterity. William Stoner would continue his ascent, not just becoming the vice director of the Ministry of Enlightenment or the propaganda wing of the Combine arm, he would also foment something of a coup, or at least he was a great assistant in that coup. Something I've taken to calling the Good Loyalist Plot, what is also known as the Rajko administration. During this time, and with much attention paid elsewhere, William Stoner would utilize his connections he had cultivated over the months that he had been the head of the press department. With this position, he would make contacts with many a loyalist, many a monster, many a businessman, many a crook, and many a rebel, too. As well as a couple of Vortigots. William Stoner thought of literature as analogous in humans as the Vortessence was to Vortigots, that being a networked web of cultural understanding points and touchstones which allow human beings to communicate a great deal of information by deferring to metaphor. It was this justification which most pushed William Stoner to what transpired over the following months. Though William Stoner would eventually meet his end at the hands of an acquaintance, no less, just one such business person to whom he helped create this particular scheme, William Stoner utilized his position to sell books of a classical nature in bulk through stores, using the Disbursement of Attenuated Literature Act carried over from Terminal 7. William Stoner would sell 5 qualified loyalist books in packages along with 500 classical Mo certified texts. These texts were largely original, unedited, but fixed to the beginning was that singular, hastily written, personally written essay. The 55-year-old PhD in literature would ultimately, personally, write over 4,000 starter essays. These, as you can see at the top here, amounted to the public-facing collection of classical works that were on display at the library at any given time. The rest of the books represented here come from months of direct Ministry of Enlightenment embezzlement and printing utilization in off hours when there were no other workers present, producing en masse as many books as he possibly could at any given hour of the day, so that he could sequester them away and hide them away in the nooks and crannies that he found throughout an illustrious career as taking photographs for the newspaper. He knew where to hide books, he had the resources to hide books, and in addition, he was selling books in bulk to multiple stores across the city at a pace that was arguably highly illegal. This was one of the largest acts of fraud, I would argue, in the history of Willard Network, and it was all in service of saving literature. And so this is why I would contend that William Stoner, just as his counterpart in the book Stoner by Josh Williams, something Williams, I forget his name. You know what I mean. Just as in the book Stoner, from which the character is loosely based. He's an existential hero. And though he did pass away ultimately, I think he had a good run. I think he did a lot of good. Basically, he was the Schindler's List for books. He was like the Schindler's List for books. Get back here. He was the Schindler's List for. I would like to thank first and foremost the many talented developers and actors who helped make Willard possible over the literal years that the server has been up. I would like to thank Radx for helping orchestrate things. I would have Adel. It's a big name. I think I'm 99.5%, 100% sure actually that he made this map, which is where a lot of the events that transpired in this retrospective took place. Who else? I would like to thank our Armenian Union and Flea for being the two of the sort of apex employees of they're the two VIPs of a lot of the Ministry of Enlightenment shenanigans, and later on the Industrial Sanitation Department shenanigans, but that's for stories for after William Stoner passed away. I would like to thank those two. And then finally, of course, I would like to thank our lovely camera person here, Overwatch, played by Saint. Thank you, Saint. Give a bow. Yeah, there you go. And yeah, get out of here. Go on a walk. Go outside. Go outside right now. You watched a video on